This year, we celebrated Thanksgiving with my wife's family. For the past 18 years, it always took place at our home, but now that the boys have left, everything has shifted. Ethan traveled to Alabama, while Jordan chose Auburn. It seems to me that they orchestrated that intentionally to ensure a perpetual family dispute. It had a classic charm and was always an enjoyable experience. For the past 15 years, I toiled away as an insurance claims adjuster, and I can honestly say I despised every moment of it. I have always had a desire to engage in activities that are both outdoors and hands-on. I was uncertain about my path, yet I was certain that a desk job was no longer for me. My family circumstances bound me to my work. Emma had never held a job. In recent years, the boys have been incredibly engaged in sports and various activities. I took on the role of the engaged parent, while Emma maintained a more relaxed yet supportive presence. As I dedicate more moments to the boys, she invests more time with her parents. Emma's parents were approaching their late 60s. They remained in good health, yet the weight of aging was beginning to take its toll. Every few years, they would celebrate Thanksgiving at our home, yet we had never visited theirs. The weekend was expected to be quite relaxed and easygoing. The weather was pleasant, making the 2-hour drive quite enjoyable. Emma's dad and I relished the opportunity to reconnect while Emma and her mom busied themselves preparing for the following day's meal. There were only 4 of us, and everything unfolded smoothly. The meal was exquisite, and the companionship was delightful. Frank, Emma's father, and I were eagerly anticipating a leisurely afternoon filled with football and refreshing beer. Emma's mom simply craved solitude with her latest Patterson book. Alex, if that works for you, I plan to spend the afternoon with Harriet Miller from high school. It has been more than a decade since I last saw her. Will you and Dad be all right? Everything will be all right, my dear. Feel free to linger for as long as you wish, but please refrain from indulging in the drinks. I beamed as I gestured for her to leave through the door. As I was grabbing a couple of fresh long necks for Frank and myself, Emma's mother, Teresa, was just wrapping up the cleanup. Where has Emma disappeared to, Alex? It seems she mentioned plans to visit an old friend, Harriet Miller, if I recall correctly. That's lovely. She is likely to be present for a good part of the afternoon. She offered me an unusual smile. She mentioned she would return later this evening, I replied. The afternoon unfolded slowly, wrapped in a blanket of quietude. Teresa settled into her book in the living room, while Frank and I struggled to muster any excitement for the football games, but our efforts were proving fruitless. Alex, could you please grab a couple of black and tans from the fridge? I believe it's important for us to have a conversation. Upon my return, I noticed that Frank had just shut the door separating the den from the living room. What thoughts are you pondering, Frank? I inquired. To begin with, it's important to mention that Harriet Miller passed away from colon cancer approximately 6 months ago. I'm puzzled as to why Emma mentioned that she was going to visit her. She could have just as easily chosen a name of someone who was still alive. I chose not to reply to his words. I'm uncertain, but it seems to be a private joke shared between Emma and her mother. It appears they share these subtle secrets that remain hidden from my view. I inquired, suggesting that there seems to be something suspicious happening that I am unaware of. Precisely. I acquired 2 additional long necks. This has been unfolding for approximately 5 years now. That explains why Emma has been visiting us so frequently. What precisely are you attempting to convey? I find myself a little perplexed, I inquired. Recently, when Emma visits us, she hasn't been staying over. I'm not sure where she wanders off to, but I've been explicitly instructed to stay out of it. I questioned whether you are suggesting that Emma is engaging in behavior she ought to avoid, and that her mother is assisting her in this endeavor. I always believed you were quite clever, he replied. I drained my beer, and we both began to feign enthusiasm for the ball game. We ceased to discuss it further. As the minutes passed, Frank began to drift into slumber, and I found my thoughts wandering to what my wife might truly be doing. I emerged from my confines and began to explore and engage in some playful activities. Emma had disabled her phone locator application. I experimented with it for a while, but I didn't achieve any results. I didn't attempt to call her, but I presumed that her phone remained on and operational. I found myself pondering how those police dramas consistently manage to track down a cell phone, while I seem unable to do the same. A new pot of coffee has been brewed. Frank dozed off in his recliner. Teresa draped a cover over him before heading up to bed. Emma at last arrived home. How did Harriet fare? I attempted to convey it without any hint of emotion. She was okay. The entire house has been transformed now that the children have left home. It appeared quite lovely. I may have indulged in a bit too much wine. Driving home was a mistake. I chose not to respond. Alex, I feel utterly exhausted. I'm about to take a quick shower and then head off to bed. Let's chat in the morning, sound good? The thermos was filled with freshly brewed coffee. I discreetly slipped Emma's cell phone into my pocket. As I stepped outside, I caught Frank's soft whisper. Go get him, Tiger. Though I was unsure of his meaning, it certainly brought a smile to my face. I found myself without a clear direction, simply sitting there, anticipating the warmth of the heater. I ultimately made the choice to give the GPS system in the car a go. Given the price, I expected more than just locating the closest McDonald's. I ventured into the history section and chose bead crumbs. Indeed, everything was present. I had a charming trail of red dots revealing all the places my dear wife had visited that afternoon. Harriet's residence was a mystery to me, yet it held no significance. My only task was to traverse the path paved in yellow bricks. What I'm saying is, Red Dot Road. 15 minutes later, I found myself in a quaint little subdivision, standing in front of a small brick house featuring a one-car garage. This must be the spot, for the dots circled back and began their return journey. I retrieved my phone and accessed Google Maps. After some careful maneuvering, I found myself standing right in front of 321 David Drive within just a few minutes. Had I been aware of my actions, I would have unraveled the rest in mere minutes. I was unsure of my actions, yet I navigated my way through and discovered that the house belonged to Henry Parker. Henry Parker was Emma's boyfriend during high school, and, if I recall accurately, he even accompanied her to the senior prom. She paid a visit to an old flame and shared some moments together. That doesn't automatically imply that they devoted the afternoon to being intimately involved. Perhaps they did, yet I lacked any evidence. What I possessed was merely sufficient to stir some trouble in my marriage. I despised anything that felt half-hearted. I had planned to return to the house, but at the last moment I chose to keep following the breadcrumbs I had left behind. The choice proved to be a wise one. It appears that Emma did not head straight to Henry's residence. She made a quick stop at a nearby CVS drugstore that was conveniently along her route. What options do I have with this information? I activated the interior light in the car and began to scan my surroundings, seeking an empty paper bag or a receipt. I discovered nothing. Emma was naturally a creature of routine. She always opted for other forms of payment. She took on all the expenses. I activated her phone and selected the MasterCard icon. It functioned exactly as intended. The purchase history led me directly to the Lakeshore CVS, where I promptly obtained a copy of the transaction that occurred today at 3:45 p.m. My dear wife purchased a Trojan Pleasure Pack for $7.89 and a tube of KY jelly for $10.77. The package contained a total of 12 condoms. I trust she received value for her investment. I now possess ample information. Though I could head home, there was still one more task awaiting my attention. Initially, I created a JPG version of the CVS receipt. Next, I navigated to the phone settings. I wasn't particularly skilled in this area, yet I persevered until I succeeded. I set the image of the receipt as my wallpaper. Subsequently, I set it as the default option for her phone. From now on, every time she unlocks her phone, it will be the first thing that greets her. I have no doubt she will manage to dispose of it easily, but not before she comes to understand that I am completely aware of her actions. I made sure to send myself a copy of that picture as well. 20 minutes later, I returned to the house. Frank remained nestled in slumber on his recliner. I thought Teresa was tucked away in bed upstairs, while my dear wife was peacefully resting in the guest room. I silently collected my belongings and made my way downstairs. I placed Emma's cell phone on the kitchen table alongside my wedding ring. No note was found. I didn't believe it was essential. Just as I was about to step outside, I caught sight of my father-in-law standing in the doorway. "How did it turn out, Alex?" he inquired. "Exactly as you anticipated." He offered a gentle smile and a subtle wave. After 5 long hours, I finally arrived home. 5 hours later, I found myself heading to Florida. Goodbye to the terrible job, farewell to the awful weather, and no more unfaithful partner. I felt a pull to pause and visit the boys, yet I ultimately chose to carry on without doing so. Somehow, I found myself in Baldwin County, Alabama, rather than Florida. There appears to be a multitude of abandoned mobile homes scattered throughout the developments in the vicinity. Retirees purchase the homes and subsequently pass away. Their successors find themselves burdened with the obligation to keep paying lot and community fees until the units are sold. At times, this process can span years, resulting in a plethora of rentals on the market. In just a week, I secured a new address, obtained a new driver's license, and opened a new bank account. All of my accounts in Pennsylvania have been closed. Following the submission of a declaration of domicile, I reached out to Alabama and Auburn to update the boys' status to that of residence. I moved all the funds from every account, including the boys' college savings. As a responsible individual, I settled all of the credit card balances before closing them. Emma still possessed her Kohl's card. I terminated the insurance for the house and for Emma's vehicle. The vehicle was registered under her name, just like her mobile phone. I had planned to cancel the utilities, but at the very last moment, I decided against it. I wasn't concealing myself, yet I chose not to disclose my whereabouts to anyone. I won't trouble you with the tedious details of the other necessary tasks. You've probably heard that tale countless times before. I reached out to each of the boys and did my best to explain the situation without coming off as rude. They were discontent and puzzled, yet appeared to come to terms with it. I secured a position at the Escambia Boat Works, where I am engaged in the task of scraping boat hulls. They weren't keen on compensating me informally due to insurance concerns, so I ultimately had to take the legitimate path. It was of no consequence to me. I had no concern for whether anyone discovered my presence. I followed all the rules. I signed up for a $10 monthly membership at the nearest Planet Fitness. I wasn't particularly keen on starting an exercise routine, but I certainly needed a decent spot to freshen up after my workday. The bathroom facilities in the rental trailer left much to be desired. After showering, I typically dined out or grabbed something to take away. The routine settled in seamlessly, and I found myself quite content. "Frank, it's me, Alex. I wanted to reach out and see how everything is progressing." "Hello, Guy. It's great to hear from you. How much time has passed now?" he inquired. "Almost 4 months? Almost there. I've been occupied with finding my footing. I kept my phone off for nearly the entire duration. I activate it solely when it's necessary for my tasks, primarily for the purpose of ordering takeout." "What on earth are you up to?" he inquired. "I secured a cozy mobile home and found employment at a nearby boatyard. I've already shed nearly 20 pounds and I'm not even on a diet. The boys are arriving for spring break. I eagerly anticipate their presence, yet I dread the need to clarify my departure. Let's observe how things unfold. I'm pleased to learn that everything is going smoothly for you. Everything fell apart here." "Has your wife reached out to you?" he inquired. "Frank, I haven't received any updates. No notifications appeared on my phone. I anticipated being bombarded with foolish calls, yet not a single one came through. All I received were just spam calls. What on earth is happening?" The sound of Frank's laughter reached me from the other end. "Alex, you won't believe this. Emma and her mother truly reveled for an entire week after your departure. Teresa's first action was to remove your wedding picture from the mantle, replacing it with a nostalgic photo of Emma and Henry at the prom. I had no idea she held on to that picture. Honestly, I anticipated some sort of consequence, but not like that. It seems that everyone is content now, doesn't it?" I inquired. Actually, that's not quite accurate. When Emma returned home, the chickens indeed came home to roost, so to speak. She was unable to cover the utility bills, much less the mortgage. Everything spiraled out of control in no time. The property is set to revert to the bank next month. She still has outstanding utility bills to pay. She can't even manage to pay her coal bill. What is her way of life like? I inquired. She had plans to move in with us, but at the last moment, she chose to move in with Henry instead. That brought me a sense of relief. She feels frustrated that you closed all the bank accounts, yet she hasn't reached out to discuss it. Henry appears eager to offer his support to her. Frank and I engaged in conversation for a little while longer. I assured that I would reach out once the boys returned to school. I experienced a blend of feelings regarding the entire situation. While I felt a sense of relief at having escaped unscathed, I couldn't shake off the disappointment that there was a complete lack of remorse. It seems I may have missed the mark. The boys lingered for a week, yet truth be told, they dedicated the majority of their time to Gulf Shores or Panama City Beach. They declined to engage in any conversation regarding the marriage. It was mentioned that Emma reached out to each of them once, stated that I had departed, and offered no additional details. Silence enveloped her presence, leaving no trace of her voice behind. They expressed joy upon learning that I would continue to manage their tuition. I advised them to obtain Alabama driver's licenses and utilize my address. I found myself without a social life. I refrained from visiting bars. The waitresses at the restaurants I visited seemed to fall into one of three categories: too young, too old, or too desperate. I began to hit the fitness center, mainly out of boredom and a desire to find something engaging to occupy my time. It was far from what you might encounter in the tales of desire. Naturally, there wasn't a great deal happening in my surroundings either. It seems that a significant majority of my neighbors relied on Social Security. I found myself completely engrossed in YouTube videos. 2 years went by. No one ever knocks on my door, particularly on a Sunday morning. I ultimately resolved to uncover their identity, simply to put an end to the incessant chatter. It was Frank. "Wow, Frank, how on earth did you track me down?" I inquired. As I made my way down, I paused and caught sight of Jordan. He provided me with guidance. Ethan was nowhere to be found. "Do you have a refreshing beer for a tired wanderer?" "It is 6 o'clock in the morning." "Isn't coffee a more appealing choice?" I inquired. "Do you have any?" he responded. I had just the right ingredients available to whip up a delightful breakfast, a singular indulgence among my numerous habits. We engaged in conversation and enjoyed our meal for some time until I posed the significant question. "What on earth are you doing here?" I found myself in a bit of a predicament and decided it was best to depart from the Keystone State. I chose not to respond. Henry reclined slightly in his chair, seeking a sense of comfort. Emma and Henry tied the knot on Saturday morning. I was completely unaware that I had gone through a divorce. That's intriguing, yet it doesn't appear to be a valid justification for departing. As the congregation gathered at the church, I took the opportunity to set fire to Henry's house. That certainly piques my curiosity. "How did that turn out?" I inquired. "I'm uncertain." "After that, they were nowhere to be found," he responded. "Since you're here, it seems they will have to settle in with Teresa now." "Unlikely." I cast him a curious glance. "I set my own house ablaze just before my departure," Frank responded. And then yet another unexpected twist. Ethan and Jordan arrived. What have I done to warrant this visit? Frank and I assisted them in carrying their bags inside. We were attempting to uncover the mystery of Grandpop's sudden disappearance. This was my most informed estimation. Ethan decided to head to Mexico. "So I assume you both attended the wedding?" I inquired. "Absolutely. It was an incredible experience, far from our expectations." Jordan appeared to be stifling a laugh. Frank jostled me with his elbow. "Alex, I have a feeling your boys are pulling a fast one on us." I retrieved 4 elongated bottles from the refrigerator. "What are your thoughts on your new stepdad?" That had them both chuckling. "What on earth is so amusing?" I inquired. "They didn't tie the knot, Dad." During the ceremony, someone suddenly exclaimed that Henry's house was ablaze. All activity came to a halt as he hurried outside to discover the unfolding situation. Once everything calmed down, we discovered that Grandmom and Grandpop's house was ablaze as well. Mom persistently urged Henry to complete the ceremony, but in a moment of frustration, he erupted, declaring that the wedding was canceled before storming out. With nowhere to rest our heads, we made our way straight here. "So they didn't end up tying the knot?" I inquired. "Nope." After spending a few days together, Ethan and Jordan returned to school. A handful of individuals arrived, seeking information about Frank, but I managed to redirect them to Ocala. Eventually, they ceased their visits. Frank landed a position at Home Depot, and suddenly, life became much more intriguing. He was a bit more outgoing than I was, so in a short period of time, I actually began to develop a social life of sorts. Out of nowhere, we found ourselves attending cookouts, barbecues, and birthday celebrations. We were even invited to a funeral and a few weddings. It was there that I encountered Argie Sue Baker. Argie, a divorcee, found herself working alongside Frank in the garden department at Home Depot. After encountering her multiple times at various events, we gradually evolved into a couple. One thing led to another, and 6 months later, she moved into the trailer with me after Frank had moved out. He discovered a wealthy widow who possessed a condo in Orange Beach. Argie and I chose not to tie the knot, yet we did purchase the trailer together. She convinced me to leave the marina job, and now we're both employed at Home Depot. Isn't love wonderful? And so we've arrived at the conclusion of today's discussion. Was it what you anticipated, or did it take an unexpected turn? I would love to know what you think. Feel free to drop your thoughts in the comments below, and let's spark a discussion. If this tale captivated your attention, be sure to give that like button a tap. If you're new to this space or haven't hit that subscribe button yet, now is the ideal moment to become part of our community. Discover new and engaging tales each day. Be sure to hit that subscribe button and enable notifications to stay updated. Thank you for tuning in, and I look forward to our next encounter.